You know, success doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away slowly, one small choice at a time. A little neglect here, a little excuse there, and before you know it, the life you planned starts drifting in the opposite direction. The strange thing is, the same habits that rob people of success look harmless at first. They don't show up waving a red flag. They show up quietly, disguised as comfort, procrastination, or I'll do it tomorrow. But here's the good news. Just like small habits can steal your success, small disciplines can rebuild it. The future doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for intention. Every day gives you two invitations, one to rise and one to settle. One leads to the life you want, and the other leads to the life you'll regret. So today, let's shine a light on the habits that have been quietly stealing your potential. Because once you see them, truly see them, you can take back control. And that moment, that awareness, can be the beginning of a whole new direction. Success is rarely taken from someone in a single moment. It doesn't vanish because of one disastrous decision or one unlucky day. No, the way success slips away is far more subtle. It happens through the small habits we choose, the ones that seem harmless in the moment but accumulate quietly over time. It's the little things we ignore, the tiny disciplines we postpone, the effortless comforts we keep returning to. And while we're busy believing that everything is under control, these habits are slowly stealing the opportunities, the energy, and the potential we were meant to build our lives with. People often imagine that failure arrives loudly, dramatically, knocking down the door. But the truth is, failure prefers to whisper. It shows up in the form of a small decision to stay comfortable rather than purposeful. It shows up as telling yourself you'll start tomorrow, over and over again. It shows up in the belief that one skipped day won't matter, one late morning won't change anything, one broken promise to yourself is no big deal. Yet every one of those small choices gathers strength. They stack up. They shape your future just as surely as a series of strong, positive choices would. It's just that one direction leads toward the life you want, and the other leads quietly away from it. The tricky part is that the habits that take your success rarely look dangerous. In fact, they often look reasonable. They feel natural. After all, who hasn't been tired? Who hasn't felt like resting a little more? Who hasn't thought, I deserve a break? And yes, rest is important. But the moment you begin using comfort as a shield against your responsibilities, it becomes something else entirely. Comfort becomes the thief that sneaks into your daily routine. It doesn't break in. You invite it. You let it sit on the couch. And while you're busy relaxing, the time you needed to build your future is slipping away quietly in the background. What makes these small habits so dangerous is that they're easy. It's easy to check your phone instead of starting that important task. It's easy to put off a difficult decision. It's easy to choose distraction over discipline. These choices give you relief in the moment, but they take from you in the long run. And because they give you comfort right now, you don't always notice what they're costing you later. That is how success gets stolen. Not by force, but by gentle, daily surrender. Someone once said that every day you're either building your life or eroding it. And that's true. A day of discipline puts a brick in the foundation of your future. A day of neglect takes one out. One or two missing bricks won't cause a collapse, so you don't panic. You don't feel the consequences immediately. But give it enough time and the structure starts showing cracks. That's when people finally say, what happened? Where did it all go wrong? The answer is simple. It didn't go wrong today. It went wrong across hundreds of quiet, unnoticed moments where small habits made the biggest difference. When people talk about success, they often think about major breakthroughs, big opportunities, or extraordinary talent. But the real truth is that success has far more to do with the invisible decisions you make when no one is watching. It lives in the simple daily disciplines that don't seem significant at first. Waking up on time, reading a few pages every day, practicing when you don't feel like it, finishing the task instead of leaving it halfway, choosing growth over ease. These small, almost forgettable actions create momentum. And momentum, once it starts, can change an entire life. What you must understand is that small habits work both ways. Just as the wrong ones can steal your success, the right ones can build it. Every day offers you a chance to choose which direction you want to go. You're never locked in. You're never stuck. The power lies in becoming aware of the small things you do automatically. Once you notice them, you gain control. And once you gain control, you can start replacing the habits that drain your potential with habits that strengthen it. It's not the dramatic choices that shape your destiny. It's the quiet ones, the ones you repeat, the ones you think don't matter, because over time, they create the life you live. Your daily disciplines determine your future rewards, and that is one of the simplest truths that most people overlook. We often imagine that the future is shaped by big events, great opportunities, life-changing moments, or some stroke of luck that suddenly changes everything. But the real shaping of your life happens quietly, in the routine choices you make every single day. The discipline to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it, is the dividing line between those who build the life they want and those who simply hope for it. Discipline doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. It's not flashy or exciting. But over time, it becomes the architect of every success story. If you want to know where your life is headed, just look at your daily habits, because they are painting the picture of your future long before you ever step into it. Most people underestimate the power of discipline because the results aren't immediate. You don't read one chapter and become wise. You don't work out once and become strong. You don't save a little money one time and suddenly become wealthy. Discipline is subtle at first. It rewards you in small, almost invisible ways. But just like neglect grows quietly, discipline also grows quietly, steadily, and faithfully. And while it might not feel like much in the beginning, one day you wake up with a life that reflects every tiny effort you invested. That's how discipline works. It compounds. It multiplies. It pays interest on every small act of effort. The challenge is that discipline often feels uncomfortable in the moment. It demands energy. It demands intention. It demands saying no to distractions and yes to your goals. Meanwhile, distractions offer instant gratification. They feel good now, and discipline feels good later. And because later feels so far away, people choose comfort over discipline without realizing what they're giving up. But the truth is unavoidable. Your future asks for payment in advance. You don't get the reward and then choose whether to be disciplined. You act with discipline now, and the reward comes later, sometimes much later. That's why discipline is so rare. It requires faith in your own future. It requires believing that the person you're becoming is worth the effort you're giving today. There's something powerful about recognizing, your daily actions add up. One day of discipline may seem insignificant, but string enough of those days together and suddenly you've built momentum. And once momentum arrives, everything becomes easier. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to expect more from yourself. You begin to see progress. And when you see progress, you naturally want to do more. That's why disciplined people aren't superhuman. They're simply consistent. They know that daily effort is easier to maintain than occasional intensity. They understand that doing a little every day beats doing a lot once in a while. They're building a system, not chasing occasional bursts of motivation. You don't need to be perfect to be disciplined. You just need to be intentional. You need a reason stronger than your excuses. You need a vision of the life you want and the willingness to pay the small daily price required to create it. The mistake many people make is waiting to feel ready. But discipline doesn't rely on feelings. Feelings are inconsistent. They rise and fall. Discipline, on the other hand, stays steady. It shows up when you're tired. It shows up when you're uninspired. It shows up when you're busy. And that's exactly why it produces results, because it doesn't depend on the mood of the moment. It depends on the commitment to the mission. Every discipline you practice becomes a form of self-respect. When you keep your word to yourself, you grow stronger inside. When you complete something you promised yourself you would do, you build trust in your own ability to follow through. And that internal trust is priceless. It becomes the foundation you rely on when life gets difficult. It becomes the quiet confidence that tells you, I can handle this. I've done the work. I've prepared. I'm capable. People who lack discipline don't just struggle with the tasks. They struggle with belief in themselves. They've broken too many promises internally, and over time that erodes their confidence. But the good news is, the discipline can be rebuilt with a single decision to start again. When you realize that every small disciplined action is shaping your tomorrow, you start treating each day with greater respect. You stop wasting as much time. You stop living on autopilot. You stop drifting. You begin choosing intentionally, choosing what adds to your life instead of what takes from it. And eventually discipline stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a gift, because it is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is the tool, the vehicle, and the silent companion that carries you toward a better future, step by step, one deliberate day at a time. Neglect is a quiet enemy. It doesn't knock loudly or announce its arrival. It doesn't storm into your life with chaos and destruction. Instead, it slips in gently, often disguised as something harmless, something understandable, something you believe you can fix later. That's why it's more dangerous than failure. Failure is obvious. When you fail, you know it. You feel it. It wakes you up. It pushes you to reconsider your path or rethink your approach. But neglect is painless at first. It feels like nothing. And that's what makes it so powerful. It grows in the dark, slowly, silently, unnoticed, until one day you realize it has taken far more from you than any single failure ever could. Neglect starts in small ways, almost always with just one moment when you tell yourself it's okay to skip something important. You skip the workout. You skip the reading. You skip the planning. You skip the saving. You skip the difficult conversation, and you justify it. You say things like, it's just one day, or I'll make up for it tomorrow, or this won't really matter in the long run. But it does matter. Every small act of neglect sends a signal to your future, telling it to prepare for a little less than what you're capable of. And the more you repeat those tiny acts of neglect, the more they start shaping your life in ways you never intended. The biggest thing about neglect is that it's comfortable. It asks nothing from you. It requires no effort, no discipline, no energy. It gives you ease in the moment, which is why people fall into it so naturally. It feels like relief. It feels like rest. It feels like permission to breathe. But ease today often becomes regret tomorrow. The comfort you choose now becomes the discomfort you live with later. That's the unfair exchange neglect makes with your future. You enjoy the moment, but your future pays the price. People who experience failure often bounce back stronger because failure contains a lesson. It forces reflection. It pushes you to improve. But neglect teaches nothing. Neglect keeps you the same. Worse, it slowly weakens you. It dulls your ambition. It lowers your standards. It makes you accept less from yourself. You don't even realize you're slipping. You think you're maintaining, but you're not. You're drifting, and drifting never leads to success. It only leads to whatever life hands you by default. One of the most dangerous forms of neglect is the neglect of your potential. You were born with abilities, interests, strengths, and gifts that are meant to be developed. But if you never challenge them, never stretch them, never use them, they atrophy. Not because you're incapable, but because you never gave yourself the chance to grow. People often look back years later and say, I know I could have been more. That feeling doesn't come from failure, it comes from neglect. Neglecting the investment you could have made in yourself. Another common form of neglect is neglecting the small responsibilities that seem insignificant. Maybe it's letting your workspace get messy. Maybe it's not handling a bill on time. Maybe it's ignoring a small problem instead of addressing it. These little things feel too small to worry about, but they accumulate. And once they pile up, they become stress. They become overwhelmed. They become obstacles that block your momentum. Had they been handled when they were small, they would have stayed small. But neglect turns the tiny into the enormous. Then there's the neglect of relationships, not calling a friend back, not spending time with your family, not showing appreciation, not communicating. These small acts of neglect don't break relationships right away, which is why people underestimate them. But over time, they create distance, they create misunderstandings, they create emotional gaps that are hard to repair. Most relationships don't end because of one big argument. They end because of countless small moments of neglect that slowly weaken the connection. And perhaps the most impactful form of neglect is neglecting your own values and principles. When you start letting things slide, your integrity, your honesty, your promises to yourself, you begin losing the internal strength that keeps your life aligned. Every time you neglect your principles, you chip away at your own identity, and once that begins, it becomes harder to trust yourself, harder to stay consistent, harder to believe you can build the life you dream of. Neglect doesn't ruin your life overnight. It doesn't have to. It only needs your permission to continue, one small choice at a time. And the ironic thing is, the moment you decide to reverse neglect, you also begin rebuilding your life in the very same way, one small choice at a time. Because the opposite of neglect isn't dramatic change, it's simply awareness. And once you become aware, you start taking small steps that protect your future instead of weakening it. That's the power of understanding just how dangerous neglect truly is. Change begins with awareness. That's where everything truly starts. You can't fix what you don't see, and you can't improve what you haven't acknowledged. Many people drift through life not because they lack potential, not because they lack opportunity, but because they've never taken the time to look closely at the habits, the routines, and the choices that are quietly steering them away from the goals they claim to want. Awareness is the moment the lights come on. It's the moment you stop moving through your days on autopilot and start paying attention to the small decisions that shape your future. Nothing transforms until awareness enters the picture. People often think change begins with motivation or inspiration. But motivation without awareness is like trying to run forward while blindfolded. You can put in effort, you can work hard, but if you don't understand what's holding you back, you'll keep repeating the same patterns again and again. Awareness is that internal mirror you hold up to your own life. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it's often uncomfortable because it forces you to confront the truth about your habits. The ones you've justified, the ones you've ignored, the ones you've explained away for years. But the truth, even when difficult, is never your enemy. The truth becomes the starting point for a new direction. Some of the habits that pull you away from your goals are so subtle that you don't even recognize them as habits. You think they're just part of your personality or simply the way life is. Maybe you've taught yourself to procrastinate without even calling it procrastination. You say things like, "I work better under pressure," or "I'll start once I'm in the right mindset." Maybe you've developed the habit of seeking distra. Whenever something feels uncomfortable, you scroll, you check, you wander, you drift. These habits seem small, but they quietly disconnect you from the path you want to walk. They interrupt your progress before it even begins. Awareness means noticing these habits in real time. It means catching yourself in the moment when you're about to repeat a behavior that doesn't serve your future. It means asking yourself simple but powerful questions. Why am I doing this? Is this helping me or hurting me? What pattern am I repeating right now? Most people don't ask themselves these questions. They move from day to day without pausing to think about the invisible scripts that guide their actions. And because they never question those scripts, the scripts continue to run their lives. The interesting thing is, awareness doesn't require dramatic effort. You don't need to meditate for hours or analyze every minute of your day. Awareness often arrives in the quietest moments. It's when you realize you're avoiding something you know you should handle. It's when you hear that small internal voice saying, "This isn't the choice you wanted to make." It's when you recognize the familiar feeling of regret that shows up whenever you break a promise to yourself. Awareness gently taps you on the shoulder, reminding you that you have the ability to choose differently. One of the biggest myths about self-improvement is that change requires massive action right away. But the truth is, change requires recognition long before it requires action. You can't break a habit until you see it clearly. You can't build a new routine until you understand the old one. And you can't move toward your goals until you identify the patterns that consistently pull you away from them. Awareness turns the invisible into the visible. Once you see the pattern loses its power. It becomes me thing you can challenge, something you can change. Some people avoid awareness because they're afraid of what they might discover. They fear admitting that their own choices, not luck, not circumstances, not other people, have contributed to the results they're living with. But awareness isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. Responsibility is empowering because it gives you control. It shifts your mindset from life is happening to me to life is responding to me. That's the moment you stop being a passenger and start being the driver. Awareness also brings clarity. When you understand which habits drain your energy, steal your time, or lower your ambition, you can begin replacing them with habits that strengthen you instead. You start to see possibilities where you once saw problems. You start to notice progress where you once noticed frustration. And you begin to feel more in control of your days because you're no longer acting out of impulse. You're acting out of intention. Awareness is not a one-time moment. It's a daily practice. It's choosing to stay awake to your life instead of drifting through it. It's paying attention to the small signs, the subtle feelings, the patterns that repeat themselves. It's learning to pause before acting, reflect before reacting, and